Let's take a look at another trigger that uses the wrong before or after prefix. We'll call this one the non-existent ID. Again, this trigger will have awesome syntax, but horrible before and after usage. Let's say you work in a support org, and your org likes to use case comments as their timeline for all major events on the case. Getting a case routed to an agent might be an important milestone, so you need automation that creates a case comment every time a case is created. And that's exactly what our trigger here does. It creates a new case comment that specifically says an agent has received this case. It then associates itself with the recently created case and saves. Note that we're using a before trigger, even though we need to reference system level fields such as the case ID in this trigger. Big no-no. Still, our trigger saves without any detected errors by Salesforce. But what happens when we actually create a new case? We get a required field missing error. The field missing is the parent ID on the case comment, which, to be specific, is the ID of our case that was just inserted. Let's see why we're getting the missing parent ID error by going through this trigger line by line with our trusty database event timeline accompanying us. First, a case is created somewhere in our Salesforce. This kicks off our before trigger, and we start to execute its code. The trigger loop begins. We create a new case comment. Then we set the case comment's body. Then we set the required parent ID field of the case comment, which is supposed to be the case ID of the case just inserted in our trigger. Finally, we attempt to save our work, only to receive the required parent ID field missing error. We seemingly updated this field in the line beforehand, but what we actually did was set that field to a null value. Notice in our database event timeline that we haven't reached the record save milestone yet. So all system level fields, such as the record ID and created date, haven't been updated yet. So when we try to reference mycase.id in the line beforehand, that value right now is empty. To fix this trigger, we'd simply change this to an after trigger. Since after triggers run after a record is saved and system fields are set, we now have access to the case ID in our trigger. Let's do a quick test in our Salesforce org and create a new case. Success! The case comment was automatically created.